Aloha champions! Today is Friday, April 24th, 2020. Today wraps up chapter 5, and today's math lesson is 5.7, in which we're measuring time, units of time. Unlike distance, volume, and mass, time is universal. We use the same time measurements all across the world: seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years. Okay, so our objectives for today: scholars will measure time in seconds. Scholars will convert units of time. Scholars will read and tell time using a 24-hour clock. And scholars will solve real-world problems involving time. I know this is a lot of objectives. It is a lot. If at any time you need to pause the video to make sure you understood what I was saying and practice the problems in your workbook, by all means you can. To start us off, our vocabulary for a lesson is the units of time that we'll be using for today's lesson. We'll be using seconds, minutes, and hours. Seconds are our smallest, minutes are our middle, and hours are our longest that we're using for today. There are 60 seconds in every minute and 60 minutes in every hour. When we're using a 12-hour clock, we use AM to distinguish the morning and PM to distinguish the afternoon. In 24-hour time, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, we measure time in hours. So right now it is just about 2 o'clock p.m., or in 24-hour time, it would be 1400 hours, okay? So part 1 of today's lesson, converting time. A second is about the time that it takes you to say 1,000. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, and so forth. As I said already, there are 60 seconds in a minute. A minute is about the time it takes you to read one page out loud. There are 60 minutes in an hour. An hour is about the time it takes to watch about 2 TV shows. There are 24 hours in a day. Okay, so first part is if we're converting time. Say I want to figure out how many seconds are in 2 minutes. I would multiply 2 times 60. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 6 is 12, or 120. So there's 120 seconds in 2 minutes. Next, if I wanted to express 5 hours and 45 minutes in minutes, I'd want to multiply my 5 hours times 60, because there's 60 minutes in each hour, and I'd add my 45 later to figure out what that is in minutes. So 5 times 0, 0. 5 times 6, 30, which makes it 300. If I add 300 plus 45, I have 345 minutes. Okay? To practice this, using the same factor of 60, I want to practice what is 4 minutes in seconds. To do so, I'd multiply 60 times 4. And for number 2, if I want to express 2 hours and 18 minutes in minutes, I'd multiply my 2 hours times 60 minutes and add 18 minutes. Take a second now to pause the video and do this on a scratch piece of paper. All right, so when we come back, we're figuring out how many seconds are in 4 minutes. Multiply 4 times 60, 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 6 is 24. There would be 240 seconds in 4 minutes. To express 2 hours and 18 minutes in minutes, I'm going to multiply 60 times 2, so 2 times 0, 0. 2 times 6 is 12. There's 120 minutes in 2 hours. Add that to the 18 minutes I had left over. Start with my ones place. 0 plus 8 is 8. My tens place, 20 plus 10 is 30. My hundreds place, 100 plus 0 is 100. In 2 hours and 18 minutes, I have 138 minutes. Okay. Part 2, to read and tell time in 24-hour time. So I have 4 examples of common times for us, such as waking up. If you wake up at 8 a.m., that would be what we say in 12-hour time. In 24-hour time, you would say you wake up at 0800 hours. Okay? Lunch, right now, lunch for me is about 1:30 p.m. or 1:30 in the afternoon. To say it in 24-hour time, I would say that it is 1330 hours. Okay? So in 24-hour time, I just add 12 to any time above p.m. Anytime after noon would be 1200 hours. 1 p.m. would be 1300 hours. 2 p.m. would be 1400 hours. 3 p.m. would be 1500 hours, and so forth until we get to midnight, which is 2400 hours. Or 0 hours. Okay? If you watch this video lesson at 4:45 p.m. in 24-hour time, you would say that you are watching it at 1645 hours. If, say, you go to bed at about 10:15 p.m., you would say you are going to bed at 2215 hours. Okay? So to put this in practice, we're converting our PM and AM times till 24-hour time. If it is PM in the afternoon, you add 12 to the hours you have here. If it is AM, you just put a 0 in front of the number. Okay? So the 5 numbers I want you to convert into 24-hour time. 8:30 p.m., 11:15 p.m., 8:50 a.m., 11:25 a.m., and 7:40 p.m. Take a moment to pause the video. All right, so converting these times to 24-hour time. First time I have is 8:30 p.m. Because it is p.m., I add a 12 to this. 12 plus 8 is 20. So in 24-hour time, I would say it's 2000 hours and 30 minutes, or 2030. Okay? 11:15 p.m. Again, this is p.m., so this is late evening. We add 12 to our time. 11 plus 12 is 2315 hours. Okay? Problem number 3, 8:50 a.m. Well, that's a.m., so I'll just put a 0 in front. Take out my colon in the middle, and it would be 850 hours. Okay? 11:25 a.m., that's in the morning, so I don't need to add anything. I don't even need to add a 0 in front because it's already a 4-digit number. As a 4-digit number, it is read as 1125 minutes. 1100 hours, 25 minutes. Okay, last practice one. 7:40 p.m. in 24-hour time. Because it's p.m., I add a 12 up front. 7 plus 2 is 9. So I have 1940 hours. No need to put a p.m. at the end. 24-hour time is common amongst many hospitals and many airports and many military establishments. It's used quite widely around the world. The United States is one of the few countries that uses AM and PM distinction instead of 24-hour time. Okay, some more practice problems of doing the reverse of reversing our 24-hour time into 12-hour time. To distinguish whether it is AM or PM is if it is 12 or less, it is AM, well, 12 being noon. If it is greater than 12, we subtract 12 from it to make it PM. So the four numbers you have: 0735, 1230, 1840, 2135. Give you a chance to pause the video to try your own at these. All right, I'm gonna convert these 24-hour clocks into 12-hour time. It's 0700, so I'll just write this as 7. Between my hundreds and tens spot, I'll put my colon, my two dots here, followed by 35, that's the number of minutes. 7:35 a.m. Okay. For 1230, I'm going to convert that into 12, put my colon between my hundreds and my thousands, and put my 30 minutes. Now 1230 is PM, or afternoon. Okay. I did not need to subtract because it was a number between 0 and 12, but for my next two numbers, I will need to subtract. So 1840, if I subtract 12 from this, 8 minus 2 is 6, 10 minus 10 is 0, so it would be 6:40 p.m. It is greater than 12, so it's in our afternoon, so it would be a PM. Last one is 2135. If I subtract 12 hours from that, 21 minus 12, well, I can't subtract 1 minus 2, so I'll need to regroup. My minutes stay the same. And that becomes 11 ones minus 2. 11 minus 2 is 9. Put my colon between my thousands and my tens and my hundreds. Becomes 9:35 p.m. Okay. Moving on to part 3, solving real-world problems that involve time. I have the problem: Andre spent 1 hour and 5 minutes baking muffins. Then he spent 30 minutes doing chores until he ended at 2100 hours. I need to figure out what time Andre began baking. So to solve this problem, I have a 4-box method here: to understand, to plan, to solve, and to check. Okay, so to understand, I know that he ends at 2100 hours. That's in 24-hour time. Just because we've already done this, I know that that is roughly, or I know that that is 9 p.m. Okay, he did chores for 30 minutes, and he began baking 1 hour and 5 minutes before he started chores. I need to figure out what his beginning time is. So I need to subtract my end time minus the time for the two activities. Now, subtracting time is a little different because unlike when we're measuring out anything else that's base 10, time is base 60. There are 60 minutes per hour, not 100 minutes per hour. So when I've lined up 2100 minus 30, I'm going to need to regroup. But instead of regrouping my hundreds place to equal 10, I regroup this to make it 6, because there's 60 minutes in an hour. So I turn my 1 hour into 60 minutes. So now I'm subtracting 2000 hours and 60 minutes, same as 2100 hours. And now I subtract 0 minus 0, 0. 60 minus 30 is 30. 0 minus 0 is 0. 2000 minus 0 is 2000. So now I know that he started his chores at 2030 minutes. To figure out when he started baking, I'll need to subtract again. If I draw a line between my tens and hundreds, that separates my minutes from my hours. So start with my minutes, because I've got 30 minutes minus 5 minutes. I do need to regroup because I can't subtract 0 minus 5, so I'm going to regroup my 30 minutes into 20 minutes and 10 ones. 10 minus 5 is 5. 20 minus 0 is 20. Now I've got my hours, where I've got 20 hours minus 1 hour. I regroup, that becomes 10 hours and 10 1 hours. 10 minus 1 is 9. 10 minus 0 is 10. So he began baking at 1925 hours. So to fill in my answer, I'm going to say that he began baking at 1925 minutes. Okay? If I wanted to, or if the instructions said, I could put my time in 12-hour time. To do so, I just subtracted 12. 19 minus 12 from my hour side. 19 minus 2 is 7. 10 minus 10 is 0. Colon 25. That would be PM because this number was greater than 12. So he began baking at 1925 minutes, or 7:25 p.m. To double check my work, because I subtracted, I can add to figure out what time he ended. If he ended at 9 o'clock or 2100 hours, then I know I did my math correctly. So if I add 1925, that was my original answer. Add this up, I have 5 plus 5, that's 10. 10 plus 20 is 20, or 30, I should say. 900 minus 100, or plus 100, is 10. 1,000 plus 1,000, it's 2,000. So now I've got 2,030. If I add 2,030 plus 30, I know this is a little off. This 0 should be lined up with that 0. 3 should be there. If I add up 0 plus 0, that's 0. 30 plus 30, well, that's 60. 60 minutes is 1 hour, so I'll put a 0 here, carry my 1 hour into my hour spot. 1 plus 0 is 1. 20 plus 0 is 20. So 2100 is the time he ended, which is what we originally got. So because I was able to reverse my math, going from subtraction to addition, I got that he ended at the same time, so my math over here, or my solution, is correct. Okay? We've got 3 more practice problems of word problems. They're all going to be, you know the end time and you want to start at the beginning. You might have 1 or 2 problems where you know the start time and need to find where he ended. And when you have the wording like that, you will need to add. I'm going to work us through these final 2 problems. So this is problem number 2. A movie ended at 2205 minutes. The movie lasted 2 hours and 25 minutes. What time did the movie start? Okay. Give you a second to write this down. Pause the video if you need to. All right. So again, I'm using the 4-box method. Understand, plan, solve, and check. I know that the movie ended at 22:05. It started 2 hours and 25 minutes earlier, so I will need to subtract. I'm subtracting 22:05 minus 2:25. I'm going to draw a line between my tens and my hundreds. This separates my minutes from my hours, just so I don't get confused. I am dealing with time, so if I do need to regroup from my hours to my minutes, it will be 60, not 100, okay? So to start us off, subtracting 5 minutes minus 25, or 5 minus 5 is 0. Now I need to subtract 0 minus 20. Well, I can't do that, so I'm going to need to regroup. When I regroup from here, my 2 hours become 1 hour, but this does not become 10, this becomes 60. 60 minus 20 is 40, okay? Over in my hours side, I have 21 hours minus 2 hours. I can't subtract 2 from 1, so I'll need to regroup from my 10 hours. My 10 over here becomes 1 10 and 10 ones. 10 plus 1 is 11, so if I subtract 11 minus 2, that gives me 9. 10 minus 0, 10. So the movie started at 1940 minutes. 1900 hours, 40 minutes, okay? So that's when the movie started. If it asks me, or if I want to, I can display my answer in 12-hour time by subtracting 19 minus 12. 9 minus 2 is 7. Put my colon between my hundreds and my tens. My minutes stay the same. The movie started at 7:40 p.m. To double check my work, I subtracted to get my answer. I want to add to double check my work. So I'm going to plug in my answer over the original number that I subtracted. And if this adds up to 22:05, then I've done my math correctly. I'm going to draw a line between my tens and my hundreds to separate my minutes from my hours. I'm going to start with my lowest place value. 0 plus 5 is 5. 40 plus 20 is 60. Put 0 here, and that 60 minutes is converting into 1 hour. Okay? 1 hour plus 9 hours, that's 10 hours. 10 hours plus 2 hours is 12 hours. Put my 2 in the ones place, 10 in my 10 spot. Now I have 10 plus 10, which equals 20. 22:05. My check equals my starting number there, so I did my math correctly. Okay? We have one more example problem. Dealing with time. Brooklyn took the train at station P, and she reached station Q 26 minutes later. She arrived at station Q at 11:20 or 1120. What time did Brooklyn board the train at station P? So for this, I know that she ends at 11:20. She got on the train 26 minutes earlier. I need to figure out what that time was. Gonna give you a moment to pause the video if you would like to attempt this problem. When you're ready, on pause, and I'll walk you through how I got that answer. All right, last slide that we have here is I have my 4-box method for understanding when Brooklyn got on the train. My understand, plan, solve, and check. To understand, I know that she ends at 11:20 and that we need to figure out what time she began 26 minutes earlier. So just like I've done in the previous problems, I will subtract. If my problem said she got on the train at 11:20 and got off 26 minutes later, I would add. But this is saying this is when she ended or got off, so this is the time I'm going to subtract. So for this, I'm going to subtract 1120 minus 26. I'm going to draw a line between my minutes and my hours to separate those out in case I do need to regroup. Okay, I start with my lowest place value, 0 minus 6. Well, I can't subtract 6 away from 0, so I regroup from my closest place value. My 20 becomes a 10 and 10 ones. 10 minus 6 is 4. Now I'm in my tens place for my minutes. I have 10 minutes minus 20 minutes. 10 minus 20, I can't do that, so I'll need to regroup from my hours. Okay, if I regroup 1 hour, that becomes 60 minutes. 60 plus 10 makes that 70. Okay, so now I'm subtracting 70 minus 20. 7 minus 2 is 5. 70 minus 20 would be 50. Now, in my hours, I have 100 hours minus 0, which would leave me with 10. So 1,054. So Brooklyn got on the train at 10:54. This is in 24-hour time. To convert this into our 12-hour time, I put my colon here between my tens and my hundreds, separating my hours from my minutes. And because it's not greater than 12, it would be 10:54 a.m. Okay? To double check my math, what I'd want to do, because I subtracted over here, I'd want to add my answer plus the time it took her on the train and see if it adds up to 11:20. I'm going to separate out my minutes and my hours, just so I've got that clear distinction. Starting here, I've got 4 minutes plus 6 minutes. 4 plus 6 is 10. Put my 0 in my 1 spot, 10 in my 10 spot. Now I'm going to add 10 plus 50, that's 60, plus 2 is 80. But the 60 right there adds up to 1 hour. So I can cross those out, and that 0 becomes 1 hour. Now it's just 20 minutes over here. Now I have 1100 plus 0, which is 1100. That brings me to the same answer I got, or the same time that the problem said. So my subtraction and my addition were correct. I just need to remember, if I am dealing with time, seconds, minutes, or hours, that when I go from minutes to seconds, I have 60 seconds per minute. When I'm going from hours to minutes, I have 60 minutes per hour, not 100. Hence why I've been drawing the line to distinguish between my hours and my minutes. Hopefully this helps. Please reach out if you have any questions for me. This does bring us to the end of today's lesson. Your assignment for today is workbook pages 83 to 84. Also, following Mr. Chambers' schedule, there will be a Chapter 5 quiz posted online today, as of today of Friday. Take your time on it. You can go back, watch the videos. You can ask Mr. Chambers for help if you have any problems with anything. I know this is a lot. We just went through this chapter that would normally take me about a month in 2 weeks' time. It is okay if you don't understand everything thoroughly. My goal is to get through the workbook before the end of May. Your goal as a scholar is to do your best. If you need to take your time, you can, okay? But thank you for your time. Thank you for working through these lessons, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.